Welcome to another Boilers Extra. I'm Nathan Baird from the Indy Star.
Sam King from the Journal and Courier.
And we are in this weird kind of purgatory between two seasons. We are in a little bit of a gap. Purdue last played on Friday, does not play again until Thursday in basketball. And then we get an email today reminding us that, a week from today, we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon, week from today, spring football practice starts. It is that will be finally when things fold over for us and things get a little bit hectic for a while.
Yeah, I even noted that it was March 3rd was the start date because I remember asking Barry Odom specifically the last time we talked to him, and I was like, mentally I was like March 3rd, but in my head it wasn't February 24th until we got that email, and I was like, oh, that is next week. So
well, then when it's a February thing, you're always like, oh, okay, so like a week and a half left. No, because February is the short month. So yeah, a week from today, we will be at the football performance complex, inside or outside. Hoping inside if it's like it is today. If it's like it was last week, we could be outside. Who knows? Indiana is an interesting state. But we're going to talk a little football. In fact, let's start there. We're going to jump back and forth between football and basketball today, just as we are about to do in our professional lives. Well, let's start with football and spring practice. There's going to be 10 practices open to the media out of the 15 that they're going to do. That includes the spring showcase on April 11th. It's not a traditional spring game. They do some 11-on-11 stuff, I assume they will, as they did last year. But there's a lot of stuff that goes on that day. It's not a day where two teams split up and they keep score. That's becoming less and less common across college football, which I get. It's in one way, I don't know. Actually, let's talk about that for a second, because I'm a little bit torn on that. There's part of me that says, well, you only get 15 practices. You should only use one of those practices to the full extent that you think it makes your team better. I also think that coaches sometimes don't do it because they don't want to, especially in the day of the transfer portal, although there's no spring portal now, so maybe this is less of a concern, but they don't want to broadcast who their best players are, maybe the diamonds in the rough, the up-and-coming people. And I think it's too bad because I think the fans would prefer something with a little bit more structure and to actually show up and root for something more than just watch a practice. And I think that a program, especially like Purdue, if they could use this as a marketing thing. You can still have a practice, but you can also say, oh, but come out and our captains pick the teams. They used to have a draft. I remember going to this in Ross-Ade State, or I can't remember if they did in Ross-Ade or Mackey with the draft. I think they did in Mackey, but like drafting the two teams and splitting them up. I don't know. I kind of wish they still leaned into that a little bit, because I think especially a program like Purdue could use it as a way to really build some enthusiasm, or at least try to spark some enthusiasm. Under the circumstances, they could use some enthusiasm.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is still the case, but for a while, if you had a spring game, the Big Ten Network could come in and broadcast. Right. They had the rights to that. And so some teams got away from saying, they just said, we're not having a spring game, had a showcase or essentially another practice, and you could get away from that. You're right. It's less of a deal now. Like in the past, I could understand why Purdue wouldn't want to say, hey, come in here. Here's our best players. Talk them up. And then somebody else can come and poach them as soon as this practice is over. And now with the window being what it is, like Purdue knows what its roster is going to look like in the fall of 2026. And this kind of just a carryover from whatever happens in these 15 practices into the fall and whatever they do over the summer, where coaches are not permitted to have interaction with them in that, time span. But, it's tough. It's a slippery slope. They still do scrimmages throughout the course of the spring. They did one on a Saturday in Ross-Ade last year. I remember. Yeah. That was closed to the media. But coming out of that, they said, yeah, we saw some good things. We did some scrimmage work. So they are doing scrimmage-like situations. But as far as a spring game, I think more and more teams are just getting away from, keeping score and having officials, in a more like game-like setting, because in this situation, you can kind of control circumstances. If you want to work specifically on 2-minute drills or something like that, more than just driving up and down the field, you can just do that for an extended period of time.
That is true that they do get that real game structure stuff done in other ways, in other days. away from the prying eyes of not just the public, but even us, and they do bring us in. They do allow us to watch 10 of the 15 practices. There's a lot of places out there. I used to cover one where, depending on the spring, sometimes they let you in more if they felt it was favorable to them, and sometimes they didn't let you in really at all very much. I don't think that I don't think it's about hiding players. I think there might have been a time where that was true in the last couple of years, but now that there's no spring portal, especially if you're a team like Purdue, if somebody does something in the spring game, that guy's going to be on the field for you in the fall, and then the cat's going to be out of the bag. If you're a place like Ohio State or Michigan or Texas, there's guys who are going to do things for you in the spring game who are going to be special teamers at best in the fall, because they're only getting that little flash in the spring game because you've taken your starters off the field. And every year, I covered Ohio State for 5 years, and every year it was just kind of the joke of like, okay, who's going to be the big story coming out of the spring game, who then, the tight end who goes for 120 yards in the spring game and then catches 2 passes in the fall. Like every year something like that would happen. That's not really a worry for Purdue. I just think that it would be, I felt like it's a missed opportunity to try to build some enthusiasm. And if I were working there, I would try to find a way to enhance that, I think, just because you're not winning games right now. You may win games this fall, but you haven't been winning games. And here's a way to, like, what are you going to do in the spring showcase to, number one, get more people in there because that looks good. And number two, have people leave thinking, oh, I saw something that I'm enthusiastic about.
Yeah. And listen, we all fall victim to it. I feel like even if it's not Ohio State, we do that here. A couple of years ago, and this is maybe a bad example because he turned out to be a pretty good player in the long run. Will Hill had this phenomenal spring game or spring showcase, I guess, whatever you want to call it. And it was all like, oh, Will Hill is the next Denna defensive ends guy, this and that. And then didn't have a great year at Purdue the following fall.
He was only a sophomore.
But did pretty well at Clemson after he transferred. Part of that might have just been the defensive structure. Part of that might have been in that spring showcase he was going up against Purdue's offense. But yeah, like, you can't pick a superstar out of seeing simulated scenarios for a couple hours on one Saturday in the spring. But we do it because, we see these guys and you're like, well, this guy looks like he's improved quite a bit, or this guy stood out. And so that naturally becomes kind of a storyline that going into the off season. But yeah, I don't know how much. We'll know some things at the end of the spring that we don't know now, but I don't know how much we're going to be able to tell about what this team will be in the fall.
Well, yeah, so we were, that discussion jumped all the way to the end of the spring. Let's talk about the first day of spring, because I don't know that we're going to do another one of these pods between now and next Tuesday. We will probably bring you something after that Tuesday first practice. We will probably get together and talk about what we saw in some capacity. Follow us on our YouTube page. Those things don't always get to this thread, this feed on the podcast feeds, but a lot of that stuff ends up on our YouTube page. So make sure Purdue at Indy Star Sports, Purdue Sports at Indy Star. I can't remember. I should know the name. Anyway, you'll find it. Just look for my fat head. Let's talk about the first day of practice, though. What's the thing that you're most looking forward to seeing at the first day of practice?
Oh man. It's tough to tell, and I'm not sure that we're going to be able to tell a whole lot from the first day. But I want to see what this offensive line looks like, which groups they're pairing together, because that's something you're always looking at, like who's the guards, who's the tackles, like who's more flexible that can play multiple positions. And even though I don't think they will have a first unit set by any means, there'll probably be a lot of guys cycling in and out with different groups. You should be able to know kind of the guys that they see as like, listen, these are the guys that are in the mix for the, potential starters in the fall.
Now, the one thing that is different this year is that unlike past years where, let's not say past years, let's say last year, when you had 4 quarterbacks who were all competing at essentially the same share of the competition, right? Like it was a 4-man competition. They all had 25% of it. And the same thing happened again to start the preseason camp. They could play the coy, well, that's not our number one offense. But the guy that Ryan Brown is taking snaps from at center most of this spring will probably be the guy who's the starting center. I think it's going to be a little less. They can't quite hide that as much as they tried to in the past, although we didn't really let them hide it. We noted early on in preseason camp last year that those 5 guys were working with what we perceived to be the number one offense, and that pretty much is what won out to start the season. So, but no, I think that is a really good point because it's a hugely important dynamic into how good Purdue football is in the fall of 2026. They lost 4 of their 5 starters. They did keep their starting left tackle. They do have a guy who started some last year in Ethan Trent, trying to fight back for another starting job. But mostly it's going to be these new guys that came in through the transfer portal, probably populating the other 4 spots on that starting lineup. And do they get a good grasp of who their best 5 are by the end of the spring, which allows those guys to work together all summer and be a unit at the start of preseason camp that then gets a lot of reps together. I think that as much as you're trying to build depth, I think there's huge value in a starting lineup on the offensive line working together as much as possible. So I agree with you. I think that is a definite area of focus. There's so many things on defense that I think we should be rightly curious about. I don't know how much of it is going to be very apparent to us on day one. So I'm going to stay on offense and say, I just want to see what else is going on at quarterback besides Ryan Brown. They are committed to Ryan Brown. They committed to him with a multi-year contract in rev share. They had done that before the end of the regular season. Like that's who they want. That was going to be their starting quarterback this year. And at the same time, we've just seen too many examples of where a team needs more than one starting quarterback. I think it benefits the whole team if there is a genuine confidence that develops in the abilities and the leadership skills of at least one other guy. They all will always say, we trust whoever's back there, but you can tell with body language and other things how much that is true of different guys. Usually it happens because they'll start talking about those guys sometimes unprompted. I feel like that happened a little bit with Ryan Brown during the Hudson Card season. So does somebody else emerge like that? Not somebody that even necessarily threatens Ryan Brown's job, although I think he would benefit from competition. But do we see a tangible improvement from one of these guys that's coming back, whether it's Evans Chuba, whether it's Bennett Meredith, whether it's Garrett Odom, Cornberry, the freshman that's coming in, wouldn't be so much improvement. It would just be, what is he? But does somebody else in that quarterback room make us sort of take notice, if not right away, then pretty early this spring?
Yeah. Cornberry is an interesting, that's the one guy that I really want to see what he was committed elsewhere, decommitted, which tells me that Purdue made him a priority even after he was committed to Boston College, I believe it was. And, they need quarterback depth. If you're Ryan Brown, are you threatened by the guys you beat out for the job last year? I don't think so. Like, a guy would have to make probably a significant jump to really push you for that starting job. That is not to say that they can't be a serviceable guy in a backup role or if they had to come in. But I don't think that, you're really going to push the starter with guys who have been alongside you the whole way, kind of doing the same work that you're doing.
So we'll get a lot more in depth with football once we actually see what's out there. Again, it's 50-some new players, 53, I think, something like that.
53 new players.
Yeah, now they're not. Some of them won't be here yet for spring, but that's how many are coming into the program, and most of them, a lot of them will be. And we haven't seen a lot of these guys play in person, so that'll be instructive for us over those 10 spring practices we get to watch. And again, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I feel like that is where you're going to get a lot of like quick daily reactions where or I'll be posting those at least. And Sam and I will sometimes be getting together to talk about those things in sort of a more informal, quick capacity to get our impressions out to all of you who follow Purdue football. Let's talk basketball. Took some questions this week, and one of them leads us into a topic that we didn't touch on because it happened, and then we hadn't really done a real pod since, and we mentioned it briefly the other night. But the question came from Aaron, and it says, what do you think Paint will do in the portal this offseason? I'm thinking he goes after someone who can play the 4-5. Well, they did that. That's they have already landed a transfer in Caden Pierce, former Princeton Ivy League Player of the Year. He committed. He's been in the portal for a while because he basically took this year off. This is like a redshirt season for him, and he will have 1 year of eligibility left to play next year. And he has been a priority target for Purdue. They knew that they needed somebody else at the 4. Trey Coffin-Wren is leaving. Liam Murphy is leaving. Oscar Clough leaving at the 5. If you're trying to be interchangeable at that spot, and we don't know yet, I guess 100% certainty what his future holds. But you're going to be thinner in the front court. They needed a 4 specifically. You could probably project that. I don't know if Caden Pierce is going to end up being definitely the best 4 on the market once the portal opens. I think it's on April 7th. But he might have been the best Purdue fit as a possible starter at the 4, just with his background. He's from the Midwest. He's got a football background in his family, obviously, with Alec and his dad who played at Northwestern. And this, I thought, was a big deal for them to get Caden Pierce, because not only does he fill a big need for you, but just you go look at the other finalists for him. And it was UConn. I think that was who Purdue was maybe the most worried about getting him. Duke, Louisville, Gonzaga, like the other elite programs in college football were the other finalists for this guy, college basketball, I should say. And Purdue gets him. And I just think I don't know that he can be a Trey Coffin-Wren level player. I think he's going to be a strong Big Ten player. And to get that certainty now before anything happens in the offseason, I think is huge.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. It is a big get, but it's the biggest piece of the get is the timing of it. Now you don't have to go find this player after your season's over. You already know this guy is coming in. Trey Coffin-Wren's best offensive skill set is his back to the basket. Caden Pierce is not the back to the basket guy. He's, he can shoot threes. He's got a lot of athleticism, ability to drive and soar over the top of people, just on what we've seen him do at Princeton. But yeah, Jack Benter's playing the backup 4 right now. That was not by design. It kind of naturally happened over the course of the summer when Liam Murphy was out and they needed to run 5-on-5. So he was playing the other 4, and Purdue realized, hey, this guy really stretches the floor and gives us a different dynamic in that position. And it's worked out pretty well for Purdue. So I don't know if he stays there. I don't know if they have the flexibility to put Benter in different positions moving forward. But it does give you some versatility with what you want to do there. Part of what Matt Painter will do in the portal and what the staff will do in the portal will also depend on who leaves. And that's a thing that nobody's talked about yet. And I don't want to speculate who might leave, but last year,
assuming someone does, I mean,
Miles Colvin left, Camden Heide left, Will Berg left. Because those guys were gone, it dictated what Purdue had to go try to find, and that's why Liam Murphy is at Purdue. That's why Oscar Clough is at Purdue. Oscar Clough probably would have been at Purdue regardless because they needed rebounding help. So he was definitely going to be a target. But if you're talking about, if you look at the 5, Trey Coffin-Wren has played some 5 this year. He played it primarily as a redshirt junior. But you have Daniel Jacobson, and you have Sinan Juan. And I think that might be the position where you could redshirt Juan and maybe find somebody else in the portal to give you some depth at the 5.
Well, you've also got, again, I don't know what will happen with Clough, but you do have Jacobson. You've also got Raleigh Burgess around,
right?
To be both of those things, kind of a swing man in the front court. So I don't know that they'll need to go get a 5. I think they thought they were in pretty good shape after, because remember, Sinan Juan was a late addition to this class. He didn't commit until signing day. And partially that was just his recruiting dynamic played out that way. They really kind of slow played his recruitment to take a lot of things. He wanted to take his time, be deliberate. And Purdue knew that from the beginning. In fact, it would help them because they got in on him, as did other people, kind of late. But at that time, talking to Matt Painter, it sounded like this was the position that they felt like they knew then, based on their roster dynamics, they had to get another forward, and it would have to come through the transfer portal. And now to get Pierce just answers that biggest roster question. Now you have a scenario where you've got how many starting spots open? Like, let's say Oscar Clough doesn't come back, because I think my assumption is he doesn't, unless they get some like really good news through all these other court cases are going on out there. He has not pursued it, to my knowledge, yet on his own as of Tuesday afternoon. But Braden Smith is gone, Fletcher Lawyer is gone, Trey Conferin is gone, Oscar Clough gone. So 4 starters gone, and all those minutes now go to somebody, and they probably don't go to people in the same distribution that of the guys who are leaving, I would imagine. I don't think someone's going to necessarily, I mean, Omer Meyer, does he play 35 minutes a game next year?
No. Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer will leave Purdue being the 2 guys who played more minutes than anybody in the history of Purdue. So
yeah. Now, part of that is because they started every game of their freshman year, which is somewhat uncommon, and then stayed for 4 years. That combination of things is uncommon. But all those guys, you know, Kaufman Wren, you know, there's days where as long as he's not having foul issues and they really need him out there, he goes pretty deep, especially in second halves. Like, I think there's going to be just more flexibility of minutes next season as we're sitting here right now looking into the future. So the reason those guys left after last year was not because they wouldn't have had roles on this team. It's because they wanted bigger roles. They wanted to go play. And seems like that has worked out to some extent for them. And I don't know that Purdue has missed them terribly much. I guess it's one of those mutually beneficial things. But as you look ahead to next year, there aren't a lot of people who should be like worried about their minutes, I wouldn't think. Like that the opportunity to earn big minutes are certainly going to be there for pretty much any position.
Yeah, it should be wide open. If you're a Jakari Harris, for example, a guy who plays somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes a game, you would think, hey, there's going to be more opportunity if I return next year. You know, same with CJ Cox, who's sharing those minutes with Jakari, and you know, he plays a lot of minutes some nights he doesn't play a lot of minutes. I'm not saying those guys are thinking about leaving one way or the other. Just like, yeah, that's what you can sell everybody on after the season is like, hey, you come back, you're going to have an opportunity to earn the roles that these guys who have been playing 30, 35 minutes a game have. Now, Matt Painter's never a guy who promises people anything, with maybe one exception with Biggie Swanigan. But other than that, he's kind of always told people an opportunity, and you get what you earn. And the kind of guys that Purdue wants buy into that and come and work hard and try to earn their spot. And I think that's why there's such a great dynamic and rapport with these guys on this team, because, you know, as Braden Smith has said numerous times, Paint doesn't lie to you. He doesn't tell you things that are true. If he tells you something's going to happen, it does. If, you know, there's an opportunity, he's going to give it to you straight. Sometimes maybe with some colorful language, sometimes, but either way, he's always very truthful and upfront. And I think that's probably what is going to be the sell to a lot of these guys after the season is, listen, we have X number of minutes who are no longer on this team. Come back and compete for those spots and have a chance to get those minutes. Antoine West, another guy who, you know, has an opportunity to come in and get big minutes. Luke Ertl, a guy who's signed. These are all guards that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for.
My Seen Juan piece, my long-awaited by my editor as much as anybody who's listening to this, is going to be running any day now, and it is complete. And the thing that he himself has said to me on multiple occasions is that the Matt Painter honesty is ultimately what led him to choose Purdue. The fact that Matt Painter told him, I don't know if it was ultimately, but it was a factor that he felt that Matt Painter was the most honest coach of any of the, at least his 4 finalists. I don't think that's necessarily demeaning any of those other 3 guys, but that he felt he was getting the most honest appraisal and just setup at Purdue. That Painter said, hey, like if you come in as a freshman, it's going to be really tough for you to beat somebody out. If you want to play, you're going to have to beat out the guy who's already here and already playing and take his minutes. And I think there's other guys who would shy away from that. I think it says something both about Juan that he both accepts that. Like, he understands that. I think he just has the basketball IQ to understand that. His parents are involved in basketball. His mom was an Olympian and teaches basketball back in China. And so there's that. There's also just like wanting that competition and like wanting the fight and talking about wanting to get better. So
full circle moment. This is a story that Matt told maybe at the Final Four or maybe during that season at some point. And he was talking about Gene Katie, or maybe it was before Gene Katie went to the Naismith Hall of Fame. But he said when he was being recruited by all these people, and Gene Katie came and talked to him and left, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to play for that guy." And Painter's dad said, "Well, that's the only guy who told you the truth. He didn't tell you you're going to come in here and play X number of minutes. He said, come in here, work your butt off, go to class, and you might get to play for my team." And I think that's been now, like 50 years of trickle down that this program has had kind of the same principles in place.
That is a fair way to look at things. Let's stay on basketball and let's talk about the in-season tournament seed preview. The selection committee, I don't know what to call it. There's probably an official title, but the committee put out its in-season top 16 seeds as if the season had ended Friday, I guess, because this is happening as games were being played on Saturday, including some that probably would have affected one, especially with Michigan being over Duke and Duke beating Michigan later that night. I think that might have flipped who was 1 and 2 on this. But Purdue was number 8 on the seed line, so that is right there on the crack between a 2 seed and a 3 seed. This would make them a 2 seed. It obviously tells you that there's a lot of. I came out of this thinking the best Purdue can be is a better 2 seed, and the worst Purdue can be is a 3 seed.
Yeah,
that unless there was, there would have to be a lot of help, but that's complicated. We'll talk about that in a minute. There would also have to be some kind of implosion on their part, right? But if they stay on the track that they're on, they don't. I mean, as long as they don't lose at Northwestern, I think that's the one that complicates things. That'll look like a bad loss. I don't know if there's any other of the other 4 games they played. Michigan State at home Thursday, at Ohio State on Sunday, Wisconsin at home in the regular season finale. Those are all either certain or likely NCAA tournament teams. No matter where you lose to them, it doesn't really capsize your resume. Northwestern's the one that's going to hurt them, I suppose. And then if they really take care of business and they're a top 4 seed, they're playing a decent team in the quarterfinals of the Big Ten tournament, right? So they're in good shape from there. I just don't know how much they can climb, partially because, yes, if they got some help, but number one, there's some teams ahead of them that are their biggest games left are against each other, like Michigan, Illinois. So those guys beating each other, can they, either one of them, well, Houston or Illinois, it doesn't matter what Michigan's going to be a top 4 seed. But as far as the Illinois thing, even if they beat Michigan, they're certainly not going to fall below Purdue. And if they lose to Michigan, well, they've still won at Purdue. Like, I don't know that Illinois should fall below Purdue for that. And you got Iowa State was one of the other 1 seeds. Iowa State has a win at Purdue. Like, there's some complicating things like that above them that I think might just have them locked into a 2 at best. But then there's other ways that you could talk about that. Would you rather be a 2 that gets to still do the St. Louis to Chicago to Indy potential route, or would you rather be a 1 that goes out west? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and in some ways, you might want to be the best 3 seed rather than the lowest 2 seed. I mean, it's all matchup situated. We're not going to know the matchups until Selection Sunday, so it's tough to say. But
you never know until you see the matchups.
Yeah,
and when you see the matchups, you would say, "Well, I'd rather be that team that's a 3 than us that's a 2 or whatever." But the obviously the caveat being everything changes if you just change 2 teams. So. Yeah.
Bottom line is Purdue is at worst going to be probably a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. That's a great situation to be in. It's not what Purdue wanted to be, but given the way the season's gone, as Matt Painter said after maybe the last game they played, it stinks that I think it was after the end of the game. Not winning the Big Ten hurts, but hey, we're the ones who lost those games. So Purdue put itself in this situation. It's still a very good situation to be in. Being a 2 or a 3 seed, if you handle business like you said, you're probably going to stay at that 2 line. That still sets you up pretty well to make a run, you would think. You should have a path where you're going to be favored all the way to the Elite 8. But you can't stub your toe. And we've seen Purdue be, I think the biggest knock on Purdue right now, if it's not defense, it's just the inconsistency. Like Purdue can go out and do what it did to Indiana and Maryland and some of these other teams, Auburn, and it can also go out and do what it did at Indiana and some other games where you're like, man, am I watching the same team? Because to me, there's no way Purdue should have lost at Indiana, even though you're on the road in the Big Ten. I think Purdue is just a much better team, and you can't do that. You can't have the end of game stretch at UCLA where you basically have that game put away and you kind of fumble it, and UCLA comes away with a victory. But yeah, I still think Purdue's going to be at worst a 3 seed, and that's a good situation to be in. But getting in 1 seed is improbable. I mean, you would have to have a bunch of teams that haven't lost very many games this year lose a bunch of games here in the final stretch.
Yeah, I do think that over the course of a season, I mean, I don't know, whatever, acceptable is a tricky word, what we're talking about here. If you're going to lose at Indiana, if something's going to happen that causes you to lose at Indiana, then you also can't let the UCLA game get away and then still be competing for a Big Ten championship and a number 1 seed, right? Like that's the math that goes into that. It doesn't really deprive you of being able to do NCAA tournament things later, but as far as like where you are in standings, where you would be on the seed line, like those things compound and leave Purdue in the situation that it's in. I will say 6 of the last 7 champions have been 1 seeds. I mentioned this after the game on Friday. 6 of the last 7 champions have been 1 seeds, and the one that wasn't was the first of the UConn repeat teams. They were a 4 seed when they won it the first time, came back and won it again as a 1 seed. So they kind of got there early. It was a 1 seed in development. So I don't think, though, that has anything to do with the bracket. I don't think that's, because you're a 1 seed and you get to start with a 16 and then an 8 or a 9, that's why those teams end up in the Final Four. No. Or that's why those teams end up winning a championship. It's because the best teams over the course of 30-some games, one of those 4, it makes mathematical sense more often than not, because I think it's like 2/3 of the champions all time are 1 seeds or something like that. More often than not, one of those 4 probably still looks like the best team in the country 6 games later. And I think that's how that relates to Purdue is it doesn't really matter whether you're a 1 seed. It matters if you're doing the things that a 1 seed should do, and regardless of where they've seeded you, in order to win 6 games and win the whole thing. So I am eager to see. I think we're going to keep having this conversation or something like it. Does our perspective on that Indiana game is a little bit different today than it was 3 weeks ago? And that the whole 3-game losing streak or the Iowa State game, like, do those things change over the course of a season? Do we have a different perspective because it gets balanced out with some other things? And I think Thursday's game helps reframe the conversation again, because they're going to play another really strong team at home, and they've missed their first 2 chances to win these 1 plays against other really good Big Ten teams that were only going to be played at Mackey Arena. Illinois won here. Michigan won there. Now, can you salvage the last of that trio, beat Michigan State, and kind of reaffirm what you're talking about, like the presence of the best things about Purdue as you're getting to this very crucial point of the season where they're not going to have any room to have off nights?
No, and I think, I don't want to say Purdue overlooked teams, but I think this group, or at least the older guys on this group, have been looking ahead to the NCAA tournament, maybe since last year's Sweet 16, because that is ultimately what is going to determine, what their legacies are, their lasting impact. And I think that these guys know they have the team capable of winning it. And Braden Smith did say at one point, we didn't take some teams as seriously as we probably should have. That's a damning statement about yourself, but it's probably true. And once you get into that situation where it's like the next time you lose, you don't get another game, I think that, your focus, is a little bit more on point.
Yeah, I mean, they've got 4 regular season games left, Big Ten tournament, NCAA tournament. Some of these guys, I don't think they would lose in the first round, but we've seen it. So you could have as few as 6 games left in your college careers. And That alone should probably be a motivator. I think we have seen a better effort. It's why I'm saying the Michigan game is one they certainly wish they had back. If you stop either one of those, interrupt either one of those first half runs, it gives yourself a better chance in the second half. I don't know if they can come back and win, but they would have, instead of having to come back from a huge deficit, maybe they're within striking distance earlier. But since the Indiana game, I don't think we've really seen we haven't seen the same things that were present that night as far as where it just looked like effort, communication, some very basic things were off. I don't know why that would happen in a game like that, which is a huge rivalry game. And Indiana certainly did some good things and had something to say about it. But I don't think those same things have been as present in these last few games. I do feel like from just a intensity standpoint, focus standpoint, communication standpoint, I don't think we've seen as many communicative lapses on defense on the perimeter, at least. So there are some things that are trending in the right direction for them. But as with every team, I think it's going to be what team do you get, who do you get matched up with in the bracket? Like you could be the 2 seed and get a much worse 7 that you're matched up against than if you were a 3 seed, and playing a 6. That's just the luck of the draw. Let's see. What was our next question? Let's go to Brad Eban because he's one of our loyal followers. You have 4 years, an unlimited training budget, and the best coaches in the world to prepare you for any Winter Olympic sport. If you beat one single person, you win $100 million. If you finish dead last, you go to jail for 6 months. Do you do that? And which sport do you choose? And I'm going to say right now, Brad didn't say this. I mean, the answer is obviously curling. But that's a team sport. So individual sport. What individual sport would you do? Or would you say, I'm not taking the risk even for $100 million?
Yeah. Man, I mean, looking at our physiques, I think it's going to take more than 4 years of training to get us into any kind of situation where we feel confident. I guess we're competing against other Olympians here is the thing. So I don't know. I'm probably going to jail for 6 months regardless. So I'm just going to back out because, I guess 6 months of my life to me is worth more than $100 million, I would think.
Yes, I think that is probably true. Again, I would do curling, but if you're limiting it to individual events, I mean, I guess the one that I thought was like maybe the biathlon, because like if you teach me, I'm just hoping that somebody, like the one thing I did think was like maybe I could do an event like that and hope that somebody else falls down to where if I just complete it, because I only have to beat one person, right? All right, changing gears here. This is another one from Brad. You have 4 years, an unlimited training budget, and the best coaches in the world to prepare you for any Winter Olympic sport. If you beat one single person, you win $100 million. If you finish dead last, you go to jail for 6 months. Do you do that? And which sport do you choose? Now, I think the obvious answer is curling. Like that would be the easiest thing to learn. I don't know that I need strength or speed for certainly. And it just seems like the one that I could make an average person could figure out a way to do it. But I'm not sure that keeps in the spirit of the question. So what would you do an individual sport? And there aren't that many Winter Olympic sports, actually. I looked at the list, and it's a smaller list than you would think. But any of the individual sports, would you take that risk? $100 million just to beat one person or 6 months in jail?
So given my advanced age and in the Summer Olympics, I might have a different answer. The 6 months of jail to me is not worth the risk. Like $100 million, is that what it was?
$100 million. So not only like family tree changing money, but like transforming your tree from like a bonsai to a redwood.
No, I think that even with that amount of money, I think that the 6 months that I wouldn't have to spend in jail is more valuable to me. And I'm starting from ground zero because figure skating and downhill slalom, all that stuff. I have no idea even where to begin. So you can get the best trainers in the world, but they're going to have to start out with the most basic of here's how you put on the equipment. I would need probably more than 4 years to even feel comfortable that I could compete with other Olympians who've been doing this since they were, 3-4 years old and have mastered it. The one caveat, I guess, is if somebody has to get disqualified or something like that, then you by default would win. But
So
I'm just gonna back out and say like, no, I'm gonna leave these sports to the people who have been training for it much longer than the 4 years with whatever coaching you can give me.
Yeah, see, that's the one thing that does give me some pause. It's like, okay, what if I was trained to do biathlon or ski jumping, and the only thing I was taught to do was to just successfully achieve the thing and just hope that somebody gets DQ'd and finishes last, even though I would have like the worst time or whatever, or like speed skating, because people are wiping out in speed skating all the time, right? But I think they can get up and finish. They would still probably beat my fat butt around the rink, and I would still lose. And then there's obviously the sports where I could, I would die, like luge. So that adds another complicating factor to it. The fact that even if I somehow got the 100 million, it would just go to my next of kin because I would clearly die attempting to finish that. So I think I'd probably chicken out, but man, I'm tempted to just like, it's 100 million. If it was like 1 million, you would say no. 100 million, even for 6 months in jail is, and you could probably even if you spent the 6 months in jail, you're selling the book rights to this story, right? It's you're in the movie rights. Like you're still making something at the end of the day. I'm talking myself into it. I'm talking myself into like biathlon maybe, where they just teach me to shoot and ski, and then again hope that somebody hurts themselves and can't finish. There you go, 100 million. But it would definitely, the only way you can even think about doing this is if you get to pick the sport, right? Because if somebody just gives you figure skating, you're screwed.
Yeah. And growing up in Indiana, there's not a lot of opportunity to go out and practice this stuff. So I would have to relocate somewhere.
I was surprised. Somebody, it might have been Emily Giambavo from the Washington Post, who used to cover Maryland. She does a lot of data stuff. And formerly of the Washington Post, unfortunately, after what's happened to their sports department. But I think she put up a graphic of something that her team had worked on, which was showing where all the training spots for all the Olympic sports were around the country. And there was a lot more curling farther south in the country than I would have guessed. Like you could curling in like Oklahoma or whatever. So that was a little bit surprising to me, but I really have no experience with, I'm looking at this list, any of these. Like I haven't done any of this. I've played some video ice hockey. I've never really been on skates. It would be a disaster. What would you do in the summer? Like what would be your one in the summer? Because the summer one's also one where like, oh, I'll just do shot put and then hope somebody DQs and none of their things count.
Faults 3 times or what? Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be the shortest shot put in the Olympic history. I assure you that. But I would probably the most go with a running event for sure. And I would do something like distance running. If you have 4 years to train, you could get cardiovascularly enhanced enough to run long distance and just hope somebody, for whatever reason, unfortunately to say this, like gets an injury and defaults or something like that. And then you could, have a chance to finish next to last.
I think the Summer Olympics list is bigger. I was surprised at how small the list of sports is for the Winter Olympics. I thought it was like much more complicated.
Now, if it's a team sport and I can just be on the hockey roster, but I don't have to play, for example, like.
Yeah, but see, I think that's why I took that out. Like, it's got to be an individual sport. Or maybe, now, what if they introduced solo curling? where like you let the thing go and then you like Bugs
sweep it.
Bunnied up and then started doing the sweeping yourself. But then you also had to do the opposite sweep to get it to stop. Now we're talking about something. I think not only would that be a better sport than curling already is, and I like watching curling, I guess, but that would be interesting. By the way, a lot more sports in the summer. I thought you might pick like diving.
Yeah, but that's score based, and even if you fail a dive, you're still going to score way more points than I'm going to do my basic dive set. Or
trampoline.
I actually wrote a story on a trampoline Olympian at one point for Team USA's website.
There you go. You're already well versed. Oh, golf. See, the summer is way less treacherous. You have a lot more things that I think you could probably talk yourself into. So, good question, Brad. The answer is I think we're both going to chicken out and stay at home and play with our kid rather than fund their wildest adventures for the rest of their lives. And that little note of frivolity, unfortunately, brings us to a more somber note today, which was just something that I think we both wanted to talk about today, which is memories of Rondale Moore and this very shocking end to his life last week. I guess we're supposed to give a trigger warning for people who are, talking about things like suicide and issues like that. But this was stunning. And someone who only 25 years old and someone who, even though he'd been gone from Purdue, one of those guys that the things that they do on the athletic field always make them seem like they're present because you got to watch it. Like, I'm not a Purdue fan. I didn't grow up a Purdue fan, but I got to watch that Rondale Moore season, and that was some really, really special stuff.
Yeah, and that he spent 3 years at Purdue. He was mostly injured in 2019, 2020. Didn't have a lot of big moments like he had that 2018 season, his true freshman season. And I think that the thing that people will remember forever is the Ohio State game, right? There's no doubt about that. Tyler Trent beating the number 2 team in the country, and just the way he did it, busting through tacklers and kept on running, and 12 catches for 170 yards. But the thing when I think of Rondale Moore that stands out to me, because he was a big time recruit. He was being lured by Texas, Alabama, Georgia, anybody who was a powerhouse in football wanted this guy. And he ends up at the U.S. Army All-American Bowl, I think it was, where he announced he was going to Purdue. And you think, okay, here's a big time guy. Now let's see what he can do. 2 quarters into his first game, and it's not some bye game. They played Northwestern to start that season, and a pretty good Northwestern team. And he has more than 300 yards in 2 quarters. And it's just like, okay, he's as good as advertised. I don't need to see anything else. This dude is legit. And I think we all saw superstardom on this guy from, the start of his career.
Yeah.
Pretty telling about how explosive he is, that he essentially missed his final 2 seasons at Purdue and still was the 49th pick in the NFL draft.
Think of how many guys just in this most recent era of Purdue football, like these guys who coming in through the transfer portal who were bigger prospects and just didn't work out where they were before. And you're asking like, well, just be a competent starter, and they can't deliver on that expectation. And Rondale Moore came in with these really outlandish expectations almost. And the first sign that there was something special there, again, it's the talking that's going on behind the scenes. And sometimes people are just so talented that the coaches and players around them just can't help themselves. Like they won't shut up about what they're seeing. And then that viral clip goes out of him doing the 600-pound squat.
Right.
And
at 160 pounds.
At 160 pounds and listed at 5'9", but come on. No. And it was everything that was building up to that moment. And then to have it just explode like that was, I remember being in the Mackey Arena press area after the game. And they used to, not like they do now where they have 3 players up with the at a time or whatever, 3 or 4, whatever we get. they used to just bring a handful of players in, and they would kind of be off to the side, and you would kind of move around and talk to whoever you wanted. And they brought Rondale Moore in, and I just remember how sort of he was so ready for the moment on the field, and so did not want the moment off the field.
Yes,
like he was very unassuming, very soft spoken. I think as with anyone else, I'm sure he wanted like recognition for the hard work he puts in, the things he did, but he didn't like to talk about it. And I think sometimes those people can get sometimes the wrong reputation. In my experience, those guys tend to just they don't feel comfortable talking. They don't want to say the wrong thing. They want the focus to be on the team. They're uncomfortable with that individual focus. And the image that I'll always remember, it's the clip. It takes you back to the Ohio State game. I wrote about this the night that he passed. Is just that moment in the Ohio State game, and there's so many highlight reel moments that he had in that game. But the one where he's already breaking off a run, he's just getting started along the sideline. People know which one I'm talking about. And I think it's Isaiah Pryor from Ohio State comes over to tackle him. And Rondale Moore just like pushes him back 5 yards, kind of just unceremoniously discards him, and then takes off and finishes the touchdown run. And I think that was the fourth quarter. That was pretty much the play that sealed that one. And I just remember thinking, like, because I had sat there and got to watch Saquon Barkley come in and other players come in, and you could tell right away the guys who had something that nobody else had. And for that brief moment, his body allowed, not brief, the whole season, but his body allowed all that talent to come out. And it was just we haven't seen anything like it at Purdue since then, at least in terms of football. And it was a generational thing. That's a thing that gets thrown around a lot, but that was like generational talent. It was the equivalent of some of the things that we saw Ryan Kerrigan doing on the defensive side not that long before that. Where it's not just that they're excelling or they're getting good numbers, it's that it's starting to look a little bit unfair. Like Rondale Moore made it look unfair against the number 2 team in the country. And that was what it meant for Purdue on the field. I thought was less important in some ways than what it meant for Purdue to say, we have this guy. This is our guy. And he does these things, and everybody else in the country wishes they had this guy, but we haven't. That's just been a rare thing for Purdue football, and he was able to give that to this fan base.
Yeah, and it's funny because talking to Kevin Sumlin for some stuff about the 25th anniversary of the Rose Bowl season. He coached receivers. Kevin Sumlin, who's been a head coach at numerous places since his Purdue days. He coached receivers on that team in 2000. He said the thing that Purdue doesn't ever get is like that top tier NFL caliber receiver that you just know, okay, this dude is going to the NFL. And Purdue really had 2 of them at the same time. They just didn't play a whole lot of games together with Rondale and David Bell. But, and Rondale Moore, they had that guy that you knew right away he was going to make it to the NFL. He had superstar written all over him. And, going back to what you're talking about after that Northwestern game, he was very quiet, had every reason to think highly of himself after that game, and was very reserved in that moment. But the thing I remember out of that little scrum when I talked to Rondale that day, I think it was Bob Kravitz looked at me and goes, he looks like he's 12 years old. And he did. He was this tiny little 155-pound, 160-pound kid with, I think he had braces, but he just had a baby face. And you're like, man, this is the guy that just went out in his first game of college football against another Big Ten opponent and made that team look like it could not contain him. And it just like it was he's the most explosive player. I think I tweeted this that night that I've ever seen at Purdue. And that's, I've been watching Purdue football now for 30 something years, at least going back to the days when they were just on Channel 4. You could watch Purdue and Indiana back in the old school days. So he was a unique talent. He's pretty special player in terms of what he did at Purdue. And then, he had a pretty good NFL career. And it's just like kind of the same thing with Purdue. Injuries, unfortunate ones the last 2 years before the season ever got going, kind of stunted his ability to go out and show what he could do.
I mean, he was a guy that I don't want to reduce him to only his athletics, so we can move beyond that in a second. But just in terms of his athletic ability, was a guy that in my fantasy football leagues for many years, a guy I was like taking late in drafts because I was like, I just saw what I saw. Like, it's going to happen someday. Like, it's going to happen. He'll be able to if he could just put together one season like that in the NFL, because what he did on the field to numerous teams that year showed he was capable of, I think, doing that at the next level of having, if he could just stay healthy for a sustained period. But I'm it's hard to talk about those things tonight because it's, we can't speculate on why this happened, except that I don't think I think that it makes too much sense that what we're talking about and the fact that it never was replicated, and the fact that there was that photo that went out of how much his legs had been stitched up by all the surgeries over the years. And that took a toll, not just a physical toll, but a mental one. He wouldn't be the first athlete that's had that problem where I think the injury itself takes a toll mentally. I think the not being able to fulfill expectations takes a toll. Those frustrations take a toll. And, it's just a reminder of what people are going through, and to try to reach out to those people if you can. Words are inadequate to kind of discuss, I guess, this part of it, but it's just tragic to lose someone at that age.
Do you remember the first time you saw Rondale Moore?
I mean, it had to be that Northwestern game, because I wasn't really covering the team at the time. I didn't come out to practice a lot. I was mostly there to help on game days. So I don't think I saw him until I saw him on the field that night against Northwestern. I can't remember if I was at a practice. Even if I was, the chances of me being there on a day where they were doing something that would have really unleashed what he was doing, I think, is slim.
You're wrong. And I'm going to remind you.
It was basketball. It was basketball.
Because we went to McCutcheon played New Albany I think it was the 2015 state championship, 4A state championship, maybe 2016. And Rondale Moore was on New Albany's team with Romeo Langford before he transferred to Trinity in Louisville and became predominantly a football player. But that kind of tells you his athletic ability a little bit too, that he was good enough as a sophomore in high school to play for a state championship 4A basketball team.
Yeah. I think the one thing I was struck by, I mean, obviously, when the fan base sees this happen, the grief is palpable. Obviously, thoughts mostly to his family and close friends who are dealing with this right now. But someone who's this public, it kind of, your identity does get shared. I thought that I was struck by two things. Number one, it's just the Purdue fan base now having lost two of these people in such a short amount of time, in Rondale Moore and Biggie Swanigan. Different circumstances, but just so young and such a tragic way for that to go. But then also the outpouring that was coming from the NFL. So he was a guy that had now been a part of 3 different franchises, and just coming from all levels of the NFL, the people who were tweeting about how much he had meant to them and missing him and how sad they were, just tells you that beyond his exploits, he was someone who was making a lot of human connections with people everywhere he went.
Yeah, there were numerous players that you would never even think these two guys associated with each other coming out to talk about, hey, Rondale just reached out to me the other day, or this or that. And, that's what happens, unfortunately, when these things happen, is a lot of memories pour out. But I think that speaks more, this was not just a football player. I know that that's probably what a lot of the casual people who ran into him talked to him about was, I saw you, I remember this, I remember that, I know you from football, whatever it might be. But he connected with a lot of his peers just on a personal level outside of football. And, that's probably what makes it kind of hard, and probably the obviously the more important impact than what he did on a football field. As special as he was as a football talent, that's only a part of who you are.
And just I'm kind of what I wrote about was that those memories do now get to live. Like, that's a thing that he then shared with all these people, the football memories, that night against Ohio State, the night against Northwestern, other games, other interactions that people had with him, I'm sure, over the years as Purdue fans. Like, those things now get to endure. And you hope that he had some concept of the impact that he made in a lot of people's lives. It's so unfortunate that I already mentioned Ohio State once this podcast, but I'll stray to do it again, because I went through this very thing covering Ohio State. The two of the people, like primary people from that 2018 game, Rondale Moore and Dwayne Haskins, now both gone. Dwayne Haskins was 24, died when he was hit by a car on a road in Florida. Some weird circumstances around that. And same kind of experience. Like, it's just shocking news that comes out on a Saturday, I believe it was. And you just really can't believe that it's happening. But life is fragile, and reach out to the people that you care about. Some of them might be dealing with something that, and they could use your help. And I guess we will end it there for this week. But thanks for joining us. We will be doing our usual post game Thursday night after the Michigan State game. And we will also both be in Columbus on Sunday. Speaking of Ohio State, Purdue will be playing over there on Sunday. So thanks for joining us. We will talk to you again soon.